In the spring of 1845, two Royal Navy ships, the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, set out from England under the command of Sir John Franklin. Their mission was to chart the elusive Northwest Passage, a sea route that promised a direct link between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. On board were 129 men, seasoned sailors, engineers familiar with steam power, surgeons trained in scurvy and frostbite treatment, carpenters, navigators, each selected for their expertise in exploration. They carried the cutting-edge technology of the era: steam engines, chronometers for precise navigation, and innovative tins of preserved food. Yet none could predict that this grand venture would become the greatest mystery in Arctic exploration. Franklin's name lent prestige to the voyage, but ill health forced him to remain ashore. Command of the Erebus fell to Captain Sir James Fitzjames, and Francis Crozier took the helm of the Terror. Both men were veterans of polar expeditions, resolute and confident. In warm English docks, the ships were provisioned to last 3 years. Barrels of salted meat, dozens of casks of lemon juice to prevent scurvy, piles of wood for extra insulation, and stations stocked with muskets for hunting. Enthusiastic letters home spoke of firm morale. Franklin's last written plan outlined scheduled rendezvous points, strict rationing protocols, and a fallback overland route, evidence of prudent planning. By late August 1845, the ships entered Lancaster Sound. As they steamed northward under crisp blue skies, men disembarked to hunt polar bears and collect botanical specimens. The ice was open and the auroras danced overhead, lending romance to the enterprise. Log entries noted favorable wind and crew in high spirits, but the romantic age of sail met the brutal reality of Arctic pack. In early September, the ice closed around Erebus and Terror, pinning them in a tomb of white. The hulls groaned as shifting floes pressed inward. Initial attempts to free the vessels failed. Spring tides and shifting winds conspired against them. By October, the ships were locked fast. Temperatures plunged below -40 degrees Celsius, and the steam engines fell silent, their funnels clogged with frost. Inside, cramped decks grew cold. Sailors wore mittens carved from walrus hide. Officers added extra layers under scarlet uniforms intended for ceremony rather than survival. Supplies meant to endure 3 years began to spoil. Tinned meat, sealed with lead solder, showed early signs of corrosion. Casks of lemon juice, stored in damp lower decks, fermented. Scurvy emerged, swollen gums, bleeding and fatigue. Surgeons improvised treatments from lichen tea and marrow soups, but their efforts were limited by dwindling supplies and the encroaching fatigue of endless winter darkness. On January 22, 1846, midwinter, the last official log entry was scrawled in the captain's journal. Weather moderate, all well. After that, no formal records survive. Temperatures remained lethal, provisions dwindled still further. Men reportedly traded muskets for knives and forks, a grim testimony to desperation. Even the sturdy whaleboats intended for overland treks were cannibalized for spare wood. The silence that followed sealed the fate of the expedition in rumor and hearsay for decades. For years, Inuit families along King William Island whispered of pale strangers stumbling across the ice, of makeshift graves and scattered belongings. Their stories reached European ears reluctantly. In 1854, Lieutenant John Ray of the Hudson's Bay Company penetrated further west than any search party before him. He found relics, a degraded wooden boat a brass kettle stamped 1853, and silver spoons scattering the snow. Eyewitness accounts from Inuit hunters described skeletal remains showing cut marks, evidence, they said, of cannibalism under dire circumstances. Ray's dispatch to London sparked outrage. Public opinion recoiled at the notion that British officers might resort to cannibalism. Lady Franklin, grieving her husband's presumed fate, denounced Ray's claims as slander. The Admiralty suppressed key portions of his report, delaying wider acceptance of Inuit testimony, an early example of colonial dismissal of indigenous expertise. Over the next half-century, numerous expeditions combed the Arctic. Captain Sir Edward Belcher led a squadron in 1852–54, but abandoned 4 ships to the ice, further compounding the tragedy. Francis McClintock, in 1857, trekked south from Beechey Island and discovered 3 graves, officers Francis Crozier, John Hartnell, and William Brain, each neatly buried in shallow graves with personal effects. Their epitaphs were scratched onto wooden markers. Still, no conclusive account of the final days emerged. Notes found in cairns hinted at march routes and ration breakdowns. By April 1848, 105 men abandoned ship and set out overland toward the Back River. It was not until 1903 that Roald Amundsen, using Inuit-provided charts originally collected by Ray, successfully navigated the Northwest Passage, ironic proof that Franklin's map held the key. Yet the 2 ships themselves remained lost beneath perennial ice. Only stories and relics spoke of their final positions. Maritime lore suggested Erebus had drifted south under shifting flows, while Terror might lie farther north. But each search attempt yielded only minor fragments, a copper rivet here, a mast top there. In September 2014, nearly 170 years after its disappearance, the wreck of HMS Erebus was located at 110 meters depth west of King William Island. High-resolution sonar revealed an intact hull, winter anchors still fastened, and portholes sealed. The shock of seeing the vessel in near pristine condition electrified both historians and the public. Video footage showed planks inscribed with officer names, valves and steam pipes frozen in time. The discovery owed much to Parks Canada's commitment and the Inuits' precise oral histories, decades in the making. Only 2 years later, in September 2016, HMS Terror emerged from beneath layers of shifting ice and silt. Its iron hull was warped but remarkably preserved. Deck cabins remained sealed, aft gunports were visible. Inside, artifacts lay untouched. A captain's logbook, a mariner's cap embroidered with the name Erebus, a simple tea caddy dating to 1840. The eerie stillness of the wreck suggested the crew had abandoned ship in haste, perhaps as ice pressure breached the hull. While the wrecks answered where, they did not fully explain who and how. In May 2021, scientists exhumed skeletal fragments collected during 19th century expeditions. Using mitochondrial DNA, they linked a bone to a living descendant of Warrant Officer John Gregory of HMS Erebus. This was the first positive identification of a Franklin sailor in modern times. The finding honored Gregory's life and gave closure to his family across generations. Then, in September 2024, researchers unearthed a mandible in a cairn on King William Island. DNA analysis matched it to Captain Sir James Fitzjames's direct male line, but the mandible bore cut marks consistent with butchering, corroborating Inuit accounts of cannibalism. The stark evidence confronted long-standing Victorian prejudices and illuminated the desperation of men trapped in a frozen wasteland. Historians now agree that multiple factors conspired to doom Franklin's men. Scurvy ravaged their gums and joints. Lead poisoning from poorly soldered tin cans eroded cognitive function and bone strength. Frostbite claimed digits, making simple tasks agonizing. Timber stores diminished. Boilers rusted shut. When, in April 1848, the decision was made to abandon ship, the remaining 105 men dragged lifeboats across the ice towards safety. Few made more than a few miles beyond the wreck sites. A striking lesson of the Franklin story is the indispensability of Inuit expertise. Their understanding of sea ice, wildlife patterns, and survival techniques could have altered the expedition's course. Early disregard for indigenous testimony delayed rescue efforts. Today, Parks Canada consults Inuit elders as equal partners. Their oral histories guided the Erebus search and continue to shape artifact recovery and conservation. Sir John Franklin's name endures. Straits, bays, and research institutes bear his imprint. But his expedition stands as a cautionary tale about hubris, over-reliance on technology, and cultural arrogance. Modern polar explorers credit Franklin's tragedy for improvements in ship design, nutrition science, and emergency protocols. Ice-strengthened hulls, satellite communication, and lightweight rations all result from lessons learned on that frozen stage. Beyond ships and artifacts, the Franklin expedition endures because of the human stories. Letters home speak of laughter in the mess hall, camaraderie on deck during sunlight's fleeting return, prayers recited in dim lantern light. Their journals reveal dreams of triumph and fears unspoken. DNA and wreckage reconnect us to each mariner's name. Brooking, Stewart, Hartnell, Brain, individuals whose lives were claimed by ice. More than a century and a half later, the ice still guards many secrets, but science and storytelling have shattered layers of its silence. Each wreck dive, each DNA match, each Inuit recollection adds nuance to the narrative. When we imagine those ships cracking under the weight of drifting floes, when we feel the sting of Arctic wind in our minds, we honor the courage and folly of Franklin's men. Their voyage was meant to open a passage. Instead, it opened a chapter in human perseverance and humility, one that still speaks across time and ice. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling us which mystery you want unraveled next. Your curiosity powers our exploration. Join us on this voyage through time.